Shalom, everyone, and good evening from Connect here in Galilee, at the Jezreel Valley in Israel. I'm Amir Tsarfati, and this is our Mideast update. A lot of stuff to talk about today, starting from the situation in Europe all the way through the vision of Netanyahu to Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, and the West Bank. And we're going to talk about much more, but not before we start with a prayer. So, Lord, we thank you so much that we can not just look into things with an earthly perspective, but more so with heavenly perspective, knowing that you control the times and the seasons, and that you want us to understand the times and the seasons. So now we ask that throughout this Mideast update, you will give us ears to hear and hearts to understand that which you have for us to know. We ask that you will bless the technical part, that you will allow everyone in the back in the control room to smoothly operate this broadcast, and for the data to flow uninterruptedly all the way to the four corners of this world. We thank you again in the name of Yeshua. Amen. So shalom everyone and good evening. I'm Amir Tsarfati, and this is our Mideast update from Connect here in Galilee in Israel. And we're going to start with what happened yesterday with the German elections. Something very big happened in Germany, something that we cannot say was not predictable, but the main ruling party in Germany lost a devastating and humiliating loss in the elections. And you can clearly look at the map between the 2021 elections and the 2025 elections to understand that all the red of the center-left Socialist Party is gone, and the black of the Christian Democratic Union took over almost everything that the left used to be. However, pay attention to the blue, which is the Alternative für Deutschland, the alternative for Germany, which is known as more right-wing, and that party is now tripled its force, and it's controlling most of what used to be Eastern Germany until the unification of Germany in the late 1980s, early 90s. So you can clearly see Germany moved to the right. The left is almost gone, and the problem is, just like in France, anyone that is far too right is being boycotted and is being painted as Nazi or racist, and so the right or the Christian Conservative Party is now seeking to have a some sort of a unity government or a coalition with the party that just lost, with the left. So I'm not sure how it's going to work if you want major changes. Friedrich Merz is the chancellor designate, and he already came up with some very, very controversial remarks when it comes to the relationship between Germany and the United States. Friedrich Merz just said yesterday, hours after the election results were already declared, that he's seeking more independence from America, and even more so astonished the world, where he said that there might be a great need for an alternative for NATO, some sort of an independent European alliance without America as the main player in it. I mean, biblically, if you really think about it, I believe the Antichrist will rise from Western Europe, and all it needs is for the right moment for America to go down, so then Western Europe will rise as an alternative to rule and control, and this is where it's going to happen. So it's very interesting to see that. But how did we get to the point where Germany and Europe in a whole moved all the way to the right? I mean, everything is capsulated in one photo from last year, and take a look at it. This is from last year in Germany, where basically represents the whole picture of what's going on in that continent. What you're looking at is a policeman, German policeman, subdues a German protester that was attacked by a Muslim militant. And while the protester is being subdued by the German policeman, the Islamist came all the way with a knife and stabbed the policeman and eventually killed him. So you understand that basically those that come against radical Islam that infiltrated into Europe are the ones that the government goes after, and the radical Muslims, without any sign of regret or anything else, are going after that. In fact, look at what went on in Austria a couple of weeks ago when another Muslim immigrant went in one of the cities in Austria and stabbed to death a 14-year-old. And then look at his smile when he was already arrested by the Austrian police. He smiled because he knew one thing: Europe is weak. He's going to probably walk away with another decision of the European courts that are corrupt and weak. And this is exactly why radical Islam is lifting its head all across Western Europe. The place that absorbed them, the place that gave them hope and food and shelter and a lot more, is being attacked by these very people. It's not the only one. I mean, a week and a half ago in Munich, during the opening hours of the Munich Security Conference, a 2-year-old girl and her mom have died in a ramming attack that was performed by an Afghan asylum seeker. And this guy also smiled to the camera. This guy was a bodybuilder. He went to a gym where he was radicalized. And this is exactly what happened. This is why the German police is becoming tougher and tougher, by the way. And from what we understand, now it's not anymore that you are illegally gathering. You can actually just say something that is now no longer allowed, and you will be already arrested. But the problem is that the freedom of speech in Germany, for the most part, is not directed against the Muslim radicals, but it's directed against those that are standing against them. And this is exactly, and by the way, terror attacks were also in France, terror attacks were also in Belgium. You can see I posted all of them on my Telegram channel. You can see that it's a matter of almost daily thing all across Europe. And this is why J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, in his speech before European leaders in the Munich conference, he said the following thing. He said, basically, your biggest problem is not the immigration from the outside. Your biggest problem is the fact that you're turning against your own people and you're silencing them. And then he said, just as we survived Greta Thunberg, so too will Europe survive Elon Musk. In other words, don't try to silence him. Just as the right and the conservatives are okay with the stupidity that is exhibited by a mentally a challenged girl that knows nothing about nothing, and yet she's becoming the goddess and the saint of the left, just as we can handle that, I think that the left should be able to handle the truth spoken by people with common sense. And when the German politicians are threatening to arrest people just because they believe that they insulted them, that's it. You can already see where it's going. So, Vance told the Europeans right to their face, you are the problem. The problem is in the leadership that silenced the common sense people and is enabling those radical Muslims to do what they do. And this is why the people speak in the ballot boxes, and Europe indeed is moving to the right. But do you think it stops the leaders from saying nonsense? No. It's not. And the more we go forward, the more right. And if Alternative for Deutschland is number 2 now with 20% versus 28% of the number 1, you're going to probably see in the next elections, it will become the first one. Now, again, I'm not praising one over another. I'm just saying it's definitely something that you should pay attention to. And Europe is going through a major changes, and the Europeans are angry because they feel like America is betraying them. Now, America is not betraying them. There's a new sheriff in town. There's a new president in the White House. And the way he sees things is completely different than the liberal progressive left, which controls Europe right now. And right now, the main problem that they have with America is its stance on Ukraine. President Trump decided to start igniting a process to bring about peace deal between Ukraine and Russia. Now, in a very skillful manner, he said, let me first talk to the Russians. Let's not go and blow it up immediately. Once I soften the blow, once I explain to the Russians how I think things should go, then we can add the Ukrainians to now say their demand, and then we can work on a deal. But the Europeans immediately are saying, how come we're not part of it? How come the Ukrainians are not part of it? Wait a minute. You will be part of something, but you cannot ignite it when both parties are so far off and there is zero trust between the two. Now, also, President Trump made it very clear to the French president yesterday that unlike Europe, that used to give loans to the Ukrainians, America gave grants to the Ukrainians, but that's wrong. America wants its money back as well. And this is exactly why Trump is seeking for a deal with the Ukrainians that for the rare earth minerals that are there in Ukraine, he wants half of them. Now, by the way, he wants the very half that Russia wants. And it's America that is taking it in order to guarantee Ukrainian sovereignty and security. You see, the problem is people don't look beyond the today, and they don't understand strategic moves. And this is what we have. The Europeans are angry with Trump. They are angry with Russia. They're angry with everyone. But the simple European person is not exactly interested in Ukraine or Russia or anything. All he wants is security in his own city, in his own country, and he cannot get it. And this is why Europe is migrating to the right, and we see that all over that place. And there was yesterday a vote in the UN General Assembly. And the vote was just a symbolic vote, and the vote was about keeping or recognizing Ukrainian territorial borders. Now, believe it or not, but Israel, as well as Hungary, as well as the United States and Russia, voted all no for that. Now, this is very unlikely for America to vote no on something like that. But the reason America voted no for that is because America is now negotiating a deal that will definitely bring about peace based on a different set of borders. Now, whether it's justified or not, whether it's nice or not, it's not the question. The question is, how do we bring an end to a war that takes the lives of thousands every single day? And this is, by the way, the exact reason why Israel had to vote with America. Israel cannot expect American support in the UN and vote against America in the UN. So it's not like we voted against the Ukraine. We voted with the United States, as allies should do. And we do that in order to ignite that process that President Trump is talking about. And you need to understand, folks, the process is much bigger than Ukraine and Russia. The process is much bigger than Israel and Gaza. We are going to look into a completely new Middle East that is creating not an axis of evil controlled by Iran anymore, but actually broadening the Abraham Accord to the point that Trump is seeking to actually bring Syria and Lebanon also to be part of the moderate Sunni axis that will then get billions from Saudi Arabia and from America to reconstruct Lebanon and Syria. And in return, they will now abandon the Shiite axis of Iran and join the Abraham Accord. This is a revolutionary thing, because in exchange for this type of deal, he will demand Gaza to be evacuated and become an export-import city for the oil and the goods coming from Saudi Arabia to Europe and back. So what we're looking at right now is a much broader American move that is going to be ignited when Steve Witkoff, the special envoy of President Trump, is arriving tomorrow in our region. So, guys, I mean, we're talking about something much bigger than all of this. Now, let's talk about Gaza. You've all seen in the past week the shameful disgrace of returning bodies of young babies and children in a ceremony that was taken from the pits of hell, basically. I mean, a big stage with Netanyahu as a vampire that is drinking blood, the coffins of the Bibas babies and the wrong body of their mom, which wasn't there, by the way, and next to them, they put American missiles, and there was music in the backdrop. Now, I want you to understand, that's not the only thing. A couple days later, they also released living hostages, and they made sure that they will show one of them kissing the head of his captors. Now, what you don't know is they told him to do that while they filmed him. You see the guy filming, he told him to do that. Why? You know why? Let me tell you why. Because later on, immediately, they told everyone, look at how the Israeli hostages felt safe and thankful to those who tortured them and captured them. Do you understand? They told him, please, not please, I mean, right now, kiss his forehead, and then they turn it into a propaganda machine. Now, how do I know it happened? Because the minute it was handed over to the Israeli side, he said, guys, I was ordered to kiss that guy's forehead for their own propaganda machine. But that was not the cruelest thing they did that day. Apart from the shameful ceremony on stage, they also brought two other Israeli hostages that were not part of the deal. They put them in a van. They told them, you're about to be released. Then they opened the door of the van to see their friend being released and them not being released. And then they took them back to the tunnels. They tortured them in a way that was unimaginable. Both of them lost tons of weight. They looked terrible on camera. And they begged on camera to be released. All of that is a terror thing. Now, I'm going to say a few words about the Bibas children that we've obviously received their bodies and their mom. So as you can see, while I talk about them, you can clearly see how amazing children they were. This is a 9-month-old and a 2-year-old that were basically taken with their frightened mom, as you can clearly see, Ariel and Kfir Bibas. And I want you to know, folks, what these monsters did is unimaginable. They wanted to tell the world that the kids were basically killed by the Israeli airstrike. But little do they know that forensic examinations nowadays can clearly see exactly how a person died. We can tell you how a person died 10 years ago, how much more a year and a half ago. And from what we examined, both of them were killed a week after October 7th, and they were killed by their captors by being strangled with bare hands. They strangled them. And then in order to kind of cover up what they did, they took rocks. I don't think they left a single bone in those babies intact. And they wanted to show it as if a bomb hit the building and killed everyone. But what they don't understand is we know exactly what it looks like when somebody is under the rubble. And that this is not what it looks like. Even the Gazans themselves should understand that every time they showed babies pulled out of the rubble, the babies were intact. In this case, it wasn't so. It was a deliberate, man-made, complete mutilation of the two bodies there in ways that even the doctors that have seen all this October 7th bodies and the horrific things that were done to them, even those doctors, the heads of the National Forensic Medicine Institute, they were shocked. It was horrific. That the same thing they did to the mother, by the way. And so where are we now as of today? Today is Tuesday. We're expecting by Thursday the return of the last 4 dead hostages, and then phase 1 is completed. As you can see, all but 4 have already been returned, and the last 4 are dead. We know they're dead, and they're going to come back to us by Thursday. This will complete phase 1. Now, let me explain the difference between phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is just about, like almost like an auction. Give us these people and we'll give you that in return. And it was all about, allow our people to move up north in Gaza, but we will release your hostages in return for that many terrorists released from prison per hostage. So it was easier to achieve that. Now, how come we never really reached that point 6 months ago or 8 months ago? Very simple. Hamas never wanted a two-phase deal. Hamas wanted, in return to the exchange, complete cessation of war, end of the war, all Israeli soldiers out of Gaza. And the amazing thing is, once Hamas realized Iran is defeated and Trump won the elections, Hamas realized, well, we better take whatever we can right now. And so they agreed for the 2 phases, and therefore, phase 1 is now about to be completed, and thankfully, we received as many living hostages as we can back in our hands, and unfortunately also 8 dead ones. And the information about the death of the Bibas family already reached at the end of October of 2023. This is why nobody insisted on their release in November of 23, because November was supposed to be only living hostages, and we already knew then that they were probably dead. And that's why they were also not included in the first release of this round, because we wanted to release first living hostages. That is why. Now, how many hostages are left for phase 2? 59 of them are left, as you can clearly see. And not all of them, 24 of them we know that they're alive. The rest of them are in black and white, as you can see here. We believe, based on information that we received, based on eyewitnesses, and based on forensic information that we have collected from places we've been to in Gaza, we believe that apart from the 24, the rest are all dead. And even the 24, we're no longer sure all 24 are alive. It might be so that a couple of them are already dead as well. So currently in Gaza, anything between 22 to 24 living hostages are still there. Now, why is it so hard to move to phase 2? Because Hamas wants the end of the war, the end of every Israeli presence in the entire Gaza Strip, but Hamas wants to stay in power. Hamas wants to stay with its weapon, and Hamas also wants international guarantees, namely UN, US, EU, Russian, Chinese guarantees that Israel will never resume war after that. In other words, if Israel decides after it gets all the hostages to resume the war, we are going to be sanctioned by the United Nations, by the US, by the EU, I'm not sure you understand, but this is nothing we can afford right now at this point. So Israel is basically saying it's never going to happen. All we talk about right now is that Hamas cannot stay in power. In fact, Steve Witkoff himself said on press that Hamas cannot physically stay in Gaza. He stated they physically have to leave. They cannot stay. He said the following thing: to bring an end to the war, Hamas will have to physically leave the Gaza Strip. That's an important thing, you understand. We're not going to allow them to stay. Whether armed or disarmed, they have to leave. That is why Musa Abu Marzouk, one of the spokesmen and the leaders of Hamas, said to the New York Times yesterday or 2 days ago, if I'm not mistaken, he said, I wouldn't have backed October 7th if I had known outcome for Gaza. By the way, after he said that, immediately he was attacked by other Hamas people. In other words, Hamas inside, between themselves, are now fighting over this whole thing, and simply because they realize they brought upon themselves destruction. Just like Nasrallah thought that by helping Hamas, he is going to somehow advance his cause, little did he know that he brought upon himself death, misery, and destruction. And so, as far as Gaza is concerned, Trump plan is the only plan on the table right now. Let me add another thing that you may not know. Egypt and Qatar insist that Hamas will stay, while Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates insist that Hamas will leave. Because they're saying, we're not going to give a dime to Gaza if Hamas is still there. So you understand that even an Arab United Front is not there to back up any alternative plan other than Trump's plan itself. So it's very important that you understand that, and that you understand that the Gaza evacuation is going to serve a greater plan for a greater Middle East peace deal, for an expansion of the Abraham Accord, where Gaza will become a major hub operated by U.S. and Saudi private companies that will basically build there a port. A port for export of oil and goods from Saudi Arabia to Europe, and that will reduce all the dependence on the Persian Gulf as well as the Suez Canal, and will basically take the sting away from the Houthis and their threat to ships that are traveling around. And it will revive this amazing plan that Netanyahu already talked about 3 years ago and 2 years ago in the United Nations, where there will be a trade route, both with trains and trucks and oil pipes that will go all the way from India through Saudi Arabia, all the way to Jordan and Israel to Europe. So great things are on the table, much greater, much bigger, much more spectacular than just that. Now, we're moving now to Judea and Samaria, that place known in the Bible as the mountains of Israel, a place where there's a big population of Palestinians and cities and villages, a place from where we had a miraculous thing taking place a few days ago. I don't know if you know that, but last week, a major terror attack was averted. And it's not because we were so smart, it's because they were so stupid. Basically, from the city of Tulkarem, a big squad of terrorists came out in order to explode 15 Israeli public buses. And 5 of the terrorists were supposed to detonate a suicide belt on the light train, causing another October 7th. Now, what I'm trying to explain, folks, is that these devices are things that we believe came all the way, this explosive and devices, it's something that must have come all the way from Iran, via Iraq, via Syria, all the way via Jordan to the West Bank, and from there smuggled into, let me show you the map. That we do have a map that shows how the smuggling has been done. Take a look at this. From Iran, all the way via, there you go, here you go. Look, from Iran, all the way via Iraq, via Syria, to northern Jordan, all the way into the West Bank. And that's it. So they have weapons, they have explosives that they get all the way from Iran, and they put together those, and we even have a video of one of the terrorists that planted a bomb on one of the buses. He get on the bus, as you can see, with a plastic bag. First, he wants to put it in one seat. Then he moves to another seat. You can see the bus is driving, by the way. And then he gets up. You see, he gets up, moves to another seat where he conceals the bag under the seat. Take a look at this. He's taking the bag, moving to a seat in the back where it's probably going to be right above the fuel tank to obviously enhance the explosion. Take a look. He's talking to the driver, and then he goes all the way back. Look, you can tell he's nervous, huh? All the way back, puts the plastic bag all the way there underneath the seat. There you go. He tucks it in above the fuel tank. And now he gets off the bus. He tells the driver, stop the bus. I need to get off. And he gets off the bus without the bag, ladies and gentlemen. And it has been done. Now, there's a gag order. They don't want to frighten the Israeli public. But I can tell you, 15 buses were supposed to explode. Only 3 exploded because, you know why? It was an analog watch that they confused AM and PM. It exploded 9 p.m. the night before instead of 9 a.m. the day after. Those 3 caused all the Israeli Secret Service and police to say, well, what's going on here? All public transportation in Israel came to a halt. And buses were searched all across Israel. And this is how we found many more buses. And also we captured some of the members of the terror squads that were supposed to detonate themselves. And if that's not enough, we believe that the grand plan was to actually divert the attention of the Israeli emergency services, and then have another raid from Samaria on Jewish towns and villages, take and kill and massacre and even kidnap Israelis there. So that may explain to you why Israel decided to operate in a greater scale in Judea and Samaria, in northern Samaria. We have a map of where exactly we operate. It's northern Samaria for the most part, as you can clearly see. Look at the map that goes all the way in Judea and Samaria, and the highlighted area in blue is where we're operating right now. You can clearly see these are the West Bank refugee camps. They're no longer refugees, and these are no camps. This is part of the ugly cities they live in. And this is where the terrorists operate from. And let me tell you something. It's not just soldiers anymore. We actually allowed tanks right now inside the West Bank cities for the first time in probably 20 years or so. And things will even go worse than that. I mean, we already evacuated 40,000 people from their homes in that area. As you can see, the defense minister said 40,000 Palestinians have so far evacuated from Jenin, Tulkarem, and Nur Shams refugee camps, and they are now empty of residents. UNRWA activities in those camps have also been suspended. Ladies and gentlemen, we are cracking down on terrorism in the West Bank as well. And let me tell you that after we averted the terror attack, one of the cabinet ministers, Eli Cohen, former defense minister, the former foreign minister of Israel, Eli Cohen said that, Tulkarem and Jenin, they are going to look like Gaza and Khan Yunis, basically, after the operation is going to be over, which means most likely evacuation is not only going to be from Gaza, but even from the West Bank itself. So we're looking into major things that are happening over there. And if that's not enough, Netanyahu just declared that Israel, although pulled out of some of the areas in southern Lebanon, but we're still controlling 5 positions within southern Lebanon, and we will not leave those places. This is the map of where we control in southern Lebanon. And not only that we control them, we allow ourselves to continue and attack Lebanese or Hezbollah assets. So apart from those 5 positions, look how many assets, look how many assets we have attacked. And Nasrallah's funeral in the stadium of Kamil Shamoun, we received a visit from these same Israeli jets that killed Nasrallah 6 months ago in Beirut. As you can clearly see, Israeli F-35s and F-15s, the same ones that dropped 80 tons of explosive on Nasrallah's bunker, flew right above Nasrallah's funeral. In a way, they said, we killed you, and now we came to make sure that you're dead and being buried. Great trolling, if you ask me, high-level trolling. Israeli Air Force is literally dominating the skies of Beirut on the day of Nasrallah's funeral. Think about it, folks. If 2 years ago Israel was too afraid to even attack a tent that Hezbollah placed next to our border, if 2 years ago we were afraid of Hezbollah's reaction, now we killed all of Hezbollah's leaders, most of Hezbollah's capabilities, and the day of the funeral of these, we fly right above to tell them, you're defeated. Israeli tanks are even seen in southern Lebanon, and as we had some snow in the last couple days there, but we're still there. We're still there. And as far as Netanyahu is concerned, the cabinet is concerned, we're there to stay until the Lebanese army and the Lebanese government will implement Resolution 1701, which means no Hezbollah south of the Litani River. And it's not going to happen because Hezbollah lives there. So we're going to stay there for indefinite time. An hour ago, the head of the Israeli Mossad, Dedi Barnea, gave a speech. And in that speech, he said something quite phenomenal. He basically said, Netanyahu was right, and Defense Minister Gallant, the ex-minister Gallant, lied to you. He said, the right timing to operate the pagers was when we did it. We should have not done that before. We had to have done that because that was the optimal time to do it. In fact, I posted it on Telegram, but I would love to read to you. He said, the Pages operation is a clear example of the realization of our mission and expresses familiarity with the enemy. The operation expresses the turning point in the war in the north and the 10 days in which the tide turned against our enemy. And that the first shipment to Lebanon containing only 500 pages arrived a few weeks before the October 7 massacre. And during the war, we shipped much more. The activation of both operations, the pagers and the walkie-talkies, at the beginning of the war would not have resulted in the powerful achievement that we achieved at the time of its activation. At the time that the pager operation was activated, 10 times more pagers were detonated than we had at the beginning of the war, and twice as many walkie-talkies were detonated. And then he said something phenomenal. He said, the amount of explosives in all radios and pagers combined did not exceed the amount of explosive found even in one standard landmine. Do you understand? Less than explosive in one landmine managed to turn the tides, shift the tides, and destroy Hezbollah or mark the beginning of the destruction of Hezbollah, which is quite an amazing thing. Let's move to Syria right now. Netanyahu's vision for Syria was detailed in a speech that he gave yesterday at the ceremony or graduation ceremony of new Israeli IDF officers. Basically, Netanyahu declared that all of southern Syria must be demilitarized, and the HTC, Tahrir al-Sham, the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the former terrorist organization that is now becoming the ruling power in Syria, cannot have armed presence south of Damascus. So Israel is building 7 to 9 different positions in the buffer zone. In other words, Israel is building new positions. And if that's not enough, folks, Israel or Netanyahu, that's the area where we said it should be clear of any military presence. And look at the clusters in the north and in the south. These are the Druze. And Netanyahu said the Druze should be protected and should not be attacked. We want to make sure it happens. And immediately after Netanyahu said that, Druze from that region came up and made that video. Take a look at this one.
نحن مجموعة قوات النبي شعيب نعلن انضمامنا لصفوف المجلس العسكري في السويداء وجاهزين لتنفيذ أي مهمة لحماية أرضنا وعرضنا من أي خطر نتعرض له والله ولي التوفيق.
That's, by the way, that's the Druze flag. The Druze is a small minority. In Israel, we have 100,000 of them. We have them in the Golan, in Upper Galilee, and on Mount Carmel. Wonderful people. And in Syria, there are Druze. In Lebanon, there are Druze. They're very loyal to the governments that they live under. But in this case, the Sunnis that took over from the Shiites, they're not friends of the Druze. And the Druze seek an opportunity right now to have their own security in their own hands and guaranteeing, or at least, relying on Israel to make sure that nobody will attack them. And Israel, of course, is sending also a signal to the Druze in Lebanon. We will also defend you if you will not allow Hezbollah to operate from southern Lebanon. So it's a message that is being sent. And by the way, for the long run, Israel also might allow the Druze people from Syria to even enter the Golan Heights in Israel and work there, similar to what we did with southern Lebanon in the 1980s and 90s when we controlled it and we allowed people from southern Lebanon to work in Israel to provide them jobs and also livelihood. So we'll see what happens, but I know one thing. We're not in October 7th. Israel right now is in a completely different place. Take a look at this map of how Israel, after the war, is securing all of its fronts, saying, we're here to stay to ensure our safety. In Gaza, the Philadelphia corridor and the security perimeter. In the West Bank, we are controlling all the area of terrorism. In southern Lebanon, and also in Syria. Israeli presence is everywhere in our enemy's territory, not in our territory, in order to make sure they do not attack us again. Folks, we did not start this war. We did not want this war. They attacked, and now they're paying for it. You cannot, out of the blue, one morning, start attacking a sovereign country and expect us to go about as if it's okay. Now, we call the shots. We set the terms. We decide who is going to be where to make sure it's not going to happen again. And the last thing, before I move, I just want to tell you folks, it's super important. The world is full of chaos, and Satan is working extra hours to deceive people when it comes to Israel, and mostly for the right of Israelis to live in their country. And this is exactly why God put on my heart to put a small little booklet called The Israel Decree. It's a small booklet, 5 chapters, but with everything you need to know about God's given right to Israel over the land. Something you can give to students, family members, anyone who have a lot of questions about this topic that the enemy has completely brainwashed it. It's less than a cup of coffee. It's less than $6, I think. And please order it. Please get as many copies as you can and give it to as many people as you can. This will change their understanding of the situation. It's impactful and it's important. And it will help us a lot to send the right, truthful message on why are we here, who brought us back here, and what plan does he have for us here. The last topic I want to talk about today is the fact that the media is not talking about the real genocide and the real famines and the real tragedies that are happening in so many places around the world. And in particularly right now in Africa, Christians are being butchered, and there are no rallies in the streets of London or New York or in Germany or in France. No one cares about it. Unfortunately, I cannot put here the videos that I have. I uploaded some on Telegram because Telegram is an independent platform where I can put whatever I want. Here on YouTube and Facebook, I cannot do that. They will immediately strike and remove the video. But horrific things are happening there in the last few days. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, they found yesterday or 2 days ago 70 Christians that were beheaded. They were found inside a church in the DRC. Christians in DRC have again been left reeling after a heinous act of violence. And these are done by Muslim militants that are affiliated with ISIS of Africa. ISIS is not only in the Asian Arabia Peninsula, but also working in Africa and other places. And ladies and gentlemen, there are so many graphic photos. I mean, this is a screenshot you're about to see. I'm not going to show you the video, but the way they even treat the bodies after they already have killed them, the way it throws me immediately to October 7th and the videos that we know and we've seen of what they did to people. And it's tragic. And this is not the only thing. Look, it's going on. It's been like that for years now, and nobody talks about it. The Vatican News last year said that over 50,000 Christians killed in Nigeria by Islamic extremists. And this is just, we're talking about numbers that are not even updated. This is another one. 62,000 Nigerian Christians murdered since 2000. By the way, there's more that are killed in Malaysia and Indonesia, and there are other places all around the world. I will even give you a shocking statement that in the 20th century, more Christians were massacred than in the 20 centuries combined before. And the 21st century doesn't look that promising at all. And those fake nation, the Palestinians, they took all the spotlight with their fake genocide and their fake famine. I mean, you can see all the videos that are coming out of Gaza right now are showing people that are well-fed, that are happy, that are smiling. Not a single memorial service held to anyone who died. And that's not they have print houses that are working hard time to make banners and flags and stages and speakers and music. They have food bloggers that are already sending videos out of food bloggers. Schools resume study. Guys, they fooled you. They fooled all of us. I mean, I never bought it, but the world did. And there's still useful idiots marching in the streets of Stockholm, Sweden, in Oslo, Norway, in Amsterdam, as well as in Berlin and other places, chanting for people that fool the world. And you see, the biggest tragedy is not that they fool the world, but they took the attention from the places where there is a real genocide and there is a real famine. And that's the tragic thing. These Christians in Africa and in Asia, they should be the first ones to come and say to the Palestinians, not only that you faked all of these things, but look what you did. No one is there to help us because you're the darling of the media, the darling of the international community. You get all the money and all the food and all the attention, while where there's a real famine and real genocide, no one even talks about it. And that's the tragic thing. I want also to conclude with giving you an update on the ministry. A lot of people are asking me, where are you going to speak? How do we know where you speak? It's very simple. beholdisrael.org. This is where you can go on the web. Go to beholdisrael.org and click on Speaking Around the World, and you will find exactly where I teach in places and cities and churches, who is speaking where. This is also, if God puts on your heart to help the ministry, you can donate through beholdisrael.org. But this is where you can also find out about our tours, about our speaking engagements, about our upcoming programs. Everything is on our website. So this is it, folks, for today. Let me conclude with the Aaronic blessing, and then we'll say goodbye. יברכך אדוני וישמרך, יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך, יישא אדוני פניו אליך, וישם לך שלום. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance toward you and give you his shalom, his peace. It's the peace that surpasses all understanding. It can only come from the Prince of Peace. He's also the Lord of Peace, who can give you peace here and everywhere else, now and forever. And his name is Yeshua, and in his name we pray. Amen. Thank you. Please share with as many as you can. God bless you, and shalom from Galilee.